Welcome to the Etsy Entrepreneur Podcast, where sellers can get help starting, building, and growing their Etsy business so that they can make extra money pursuing their passion. Are you ready to get the tips and strategies you need to be successful? Then let's get started. Here is your host, a top 1% full-time Etsy seller, LL.
What is up, guys? Hopefully you're all having an awesome day. Welcome back to the show. I got another great episode for you guys, and it's something that I've gotten questions about, and a lot of you guys have probably already done some similar shows and have sold in person, and that's exactly what I want to talk about today, is how to sell in person successfully. So what I'm talking about by selling in person is not going up on the street and trying to get people to buy your stuff, which would be pretty brave of you to do. But if you have a town, maybe you're in a small town or a regular sized town, a lot of times there's craft fairs, vendor markets, and stuff like that. So it's a good way to kind of get your business out there and maybe make some additional sales outside of the e-commerce online atmosphere. And it's maybe something that you're thinking about doing, or maybe that you've done in the past, successfully or not. I want to kind of give you some feedback and some tips and some strategy to hopefully help you guys out with that. So I have done it before, and it's like anything. There's good and bad of doing it. So that's where I want to try to give you some meat and potatoes stuff to help you out if you do decide to do it, so you can be as successful as possible. And make the most money as possible, because it is a lot of work doing it. That's one of the kind of downfalls, but it can be fun. It can be exciting to see one-on-one the people out there interacting with your stuff, giving you compliments on your stuff. It gives you a lot of motivation, to keep going, that people really like your stuff. So it's kind of cool to kind of meet those people one-on-one, whereas when you're selling online, you don't have a whole lot of interaction with the people buying your stuff. So that is definitely a benefit of it. So a couple of things that you want to get out of the way before you actually commit to doing a vendor or a craft fair, whatever the title, whatever they're calling it. A couple of things for you to think about is how much does it cost to do it? So a lot of times they sell vendor spaces. So whatever the cost is to rent out that space is what you want to consider. So in my experience, I did a vendor fair and it was 2 days long. And if you bought both days, you got like $100 off. So I figured it would be worth it to lower my overall costs and have a whole nother day of opportunity to sell my product again. So I did the 2 days. So if it's something like that, maybe it's worth it for you to commit to 2 days. If overall it's going to lower your costs and you get an extra day of selling. But just make sure it works for you and your margins. And depending on what you plan on selling, you have to have an idea of how much money you're going to make and how much you can afford. So if the rental space is way too much money, it's probably not worth it. Don't feel the need to do it. And some other factors that I'm going to talk about after this will kind of come into play as well. So maybe the renter space is high, then there's other factors that make it worth it, which I'm going to talk about here. Perfect segue is the foot traffic. So this is another time where maybe it is worth it to pay a higher rental space if there's a lot of foot traffic. I mean, especially if it is a reoccurring market, whoever's putting it on should know or should have an idea of the foot traffic. If it's the first time that the market's put on, that is a risk, and you better make sure that you're paying a very low vendor fee, because it is risky. You have no idea how much foot traffic. You can ask what the projected foot traffic is, but there's really no way of knowing. But yeah, make sure you guys ask. I mean, if you're getting, over 10, 15,000 people, I mean, that is a lot of foot traffic. So you should expect a decent amount of sales for that. But just make sure you're asking. And the time of year kind of comes into play too. If you're running down, November, December, you can expect probably higher foot traffic and more sales as well. Just because it's close to Christmas, people are going to want to buy stuff for Christmas. So that may be a good time to jump into a vendor fair as well, if it makes sense, where it's around the holidays and stuff like that. Another thing to consider is the location. Is it inside, outside? What's the weather going to be like? Is it in a good part of town? High foot traffic area of town? Is it in a walkable section of town? Is it off the beaten path where no one really ever goes? Is it in a weird factory? So make sure you ask those questions and see where it's going to be at. You want to make sure that it's a place that's well known, that's easy to get to. Preferably if it's by a road or a high traffic, car traffic or a high foot traffic area, people can see it. And on that day, they can see that something's going on, actually walk in or stop in without even seeing any marketing. So just make sure you see what kind of location it's going to be. And kind of a segue from that is make sure you see what kind of marketing they're going to do for this event. Do they have a marketing strategy? Do they have a Facebook group? Are they sending out posts? Are they putting up flyers? Are they advertising in the newspaper? What kind of marketing are they going to do for the event to kind of bring in traffic for you? The next thing is, I briefly talked about this, is it going to be more than one day? Is it going to be, what are the hours going to be like? If it's one day and it's only for 2 hours, it's probably maybe not going to be worth it. Maybe not going to be worth your time. But if it's all day, if it starts at 9 a.m. and goes to 5, I mean, that's a pretty solid day of possible foot traffic and possible sales. So make sure you ask the hours. What's the setup going to be like? Because the vendor fair that I did, there was hundreds of vendors, but they did have they had a plan of how you had to set up, what time you had to come in and set up before the thing started. You could drive your car up and stuff like that. So just make sure what's the setup going to be like. Is there going to be enough room? Is it going to be easy? Do you have time ahead of time? Because you don't want to be setting up when people are starting to get there and you're trying to throw your tent together. You're trying to display your items. It just doesn't look professional, and you don't want to have to rush around and go through that. So just make sure they have a good setup plan so that everything's organized and people aren't running amok everywhere. All right, so those are kind of the basic foundational stuff that you want to ask before you even decide to take on this venture. You need to make sure that you're asking that stuff. The next thing that we want to talk about is how to make a profit. Profit rather. How to make a profit when you do this this vendor fair or this craft fair, because while it's fun to create and make products and stuff like that, at the end of the day, we got to make a little bit of money to stay in business. So we want to make sure that we're doing it as profitable as possible. So some of this kind of ties into the professionalism, and it's ties back to your Etsy shop. If you have an Etsy shop that doesn't have a logo, a banner image, and your pictures look dark and fuzzy, doesn't look very professional. So same thing goes to a vendor fair or craft fair. If you don't have a tent, if you don't have any signage, if your stuff's just thrown around in boxes, it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look professional. People aren't going to have a lot of confidence in your product. Chances are they're probably not even going to come in and look at your stuff. So we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success. With the main thing to consider is inexpensive as possible, because we don't want to be spending a ton of money on setup and stuff like that, but you do have to spend some money to make money back. So you want to make sure that you have an easy up tent. If you can buy one for like $100 now, chances are you could probably find a friend that has one that you can borrow. So make sure that you have that. Just kind of helps you set up your section, brings your section to life. So I would definitely suggest getting one of those. All right, so here's a pro tip for you guys. Actually, it's something that I realized when I set up my Easy Up tent in a vendor fair in the past is the first day that I set it up, I put all my products on the inside, right? They had to actually walk into the tent, and we had seats in the back, and we had tables on both sides. They had to walk in and look at the stuff. What I found was a lot of people would go right to the edge of the tent, look in, not actually come in, and then they would keep walking. And it was kind of like a social experiment. It was like they didn't want to commit by walking into the tent and feel the need or pressure to have to buy something. So it was just kind of funny, and I've noticed that I kind of do the same thing. So when I'm in a craft fair, if I'm not sure about what's in there, I don't actually walk into every tent. So what I did was halfway through the first day and then the second day was I started moving stuff on the outside of the tent. So I moved the stuff where the tables were half outside, half inside the tent. And the majority of the stuff, probably 75% of the stuff, was really on the outside of the tent. And I displayed it that way. So, and it was kind of funny. When I did that, people would walk up right up to the stuff, look at it, pick up my clothing, look at it, feel it, stuff like that. Way more people actually came and looked at the products and interacted with the products. So I don't know if it was kind of like, they didn't want to feel like they were committed or they didn't want to get pressured or stuff like that, even though I would highly suggest not to do that. You want to, greet people and stuff like that, but you don't want to stand over them and pressure them, stuff like that. You want to be a little bit standoffish, but there if they need you. But I just thought it was funny, and I wanted to bring that up to you guys, to your attention. Maybe that's a strategy that you guys use, if you can, depending on your space, because there is limited space. But there's probably a way to at least set stuff up on the very outside edge of your tent to kind of bring them in. Maybe your best sellers, stuff like that, to kind of lure them inside to look at the rest of your stuff. But if you can display stuff on the outside of your tent and get some quick wins that way, snag some quick traffic that way, I would highly suggest doing it so you can capitalize on more sales early. But I just wanted to kind of give you guys that tip. That's something that I found that was really, really interesting. The next thing I would make sure is have some type of signage. Don't spend a lot of money. There's websites that you can get decently inexpensive posters or lawn signs or banner signs, stuff like that. There's Zazzle.com does signage. There's trying to think of the other big one that does signage. But if you look online, if you do a Google search, you can find a lot of companies now that do signage. Maybe you can find a local company, but you can get it really inexpensive. But I would definitely have some different signage with your name and your logo on it. And then I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, but I also had chalkboard signage with my sale on there as well. Or I did a sale, and then I had two other small chalkboard signs with just like funny sayings on them, just to make people laugh, just to make it engaging and interactive. And people just love to laugh, and they feel like that kind of you want your store to kind of bring out that personality. So that's what I did. So just some ideas for you. And then make sure that you display your products well. This is kind of what I talked about before, is however you decide to display your products, but make sure everything's laid out so everyone can see them, laid out to where it makes sense, where people can interact with the items, and as many items laid out as possible. So if you have to hang stuff from both sides of your tent or on all the tables, just use your space wisely and make sure your stuff's laid out. Don't just put your stuff in a box or in piles or stuff like that. So just make sure that people can see your items. Just make sure they're displayed well. And kind of a funny story that makes me think about that is kind of along the lines of displaying stuff appropriately. I did my craft fair, I did clothing, which is one of my top selling Etsy shops. I had on the outside of my tent a pallet, that I displayed clothing on. I wanted to give like kind of a rustic vibe, and I thought it'd be cool. So I displayed some clothing that hung down close to the ground, and I wasn't thinking about it. I live in a very dog-friendly city, and there's always tons of dogs, especially at vendor fairs, craft fairs, whatever. But these people walked by and they weren't paying attention. Their dog basically peed all over two of my shirts that were hanging there, and the owner didn't even see it happen. And then they just kept walking, and I was like, oh my God. This dog just peed all over all my shirts. So I didn't say anything. I didn't want to, it wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't like it was all my clothes, but I was like, well, I guess I probably shouldn't have hung stuff that low to the ground. Maybe kids would grab it. and maybe dogs would pee on it. So just keep that in mind when you're setting up your display stuff, because maybe it's something that dogs can pee on, and you don't want to have that happen. But anyways, it was very funny, and it kind of was a highlight of my day, having a dog pee all over my stuff. So anyway, the next thing, and this is a big one that you guys want to keep in mind, is your inventory. The biggest mistake that people make, especially if their stuff is made to order, which I'm sure a lot of you guys make your stuff to order. You don't want to make a bulk load of stuff and then have it not sell. So don't spend hours and hours and hours making a ton of inventory and you don't know it's going to sell. Make sure that you have a decent stock of your top sellers, and then maybe a couple of other of your favorites that are a lower stock, but don't have a huge inventory that you're going to have to worry about eating that cost later on. There's strategies that I'm going to talk about later on that'll help you guys out with your inventory and getting sales and stuff like that, where you don't have to have hundreds of items and then not sell it. So keep that in mind. Don't have a couple if you have different variations or whatever. Have 2 or 3 of each, and then that's it. But have a decent inventory. You don't want to have like nothing, but just make sure that you're doing it as cost effective as possible and not having a ton of inventory. Set a budget and bring that inventory with you. Definitely make sure that you bring your top sellers and a decent amount of inventory for your top sellers. All right, now I want to move into talking about my top tips to make this a successful event. All right, these are what's going to give you guys the extra revenue, the extra money to make your outing, your vendor outing, your craft outing a huge success. So this is a big one, and it's surprising that people don't do this, and this helps you with the inventory situation I was just talking about. So maybe, because a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm going to run out of stuff. And they always have that fear, like, I don't want to run out. I'm going to make extra because I don't want to run out. And they're stuck with all this inventory. How do you get around that is you bring a decent amount of inventory, especially for your top sellers, like I was saying, but you basically have a way to take orders and ship orders. You run out of something, or you run out of some particular size, a color, or variation. The next step is say, I ran out of stock on that. However, I'd be happy to take your order and ship that to you for free. All right. If you can work that out, make sure that you just offer to ship that to them for free. So not only can they get what they want because they're in the mood to buy, they will get it shipped to them for free, and make sure you give a time frame when that item will ship. I'll ship it out to you within a week, whatever the time frame is. So by doing that, you take their order, you have an order sheet, you can buy the inventory sheets or the order sheets at Michael's or TJ Maxx, or not TJ Maxx, Michael's, any craft store. You can buy the order sheets where they get a receipt, you write down their address, their name, and then you just take their payment. So you've got to make sure you have a payment processor that you can just take their payment. They pay up front. Always make sure that they pay up front via credit card. Take their order, give them a receipt, and then you tell them you're going to ship out the order. And I offered this, especially when I started running out the second day, and I had it was probably honestly like 30% of my sales were orders, where I took orders and didn't have the product because I ran out of product, or they wanted different sizes or different variations that I just didn't have with me. So this is a great way to boost your profits that a lot of people don't think about. All right, so the next strategy is make sure that you guys run some type of sale or incentive for someone to buy more, right? So I did buy 3, get 1 free, something like that. But it basically, people are already there. They come to a craft market, they come to a vendor market, they're in the mood to buy. A lot of times, maybe they're not buying for just themselves. You'd be surprised at how many people buy for other people and not themselves there. Where they like something, they're like, oh, I'm going to get one for me and so-and-so. Give them the incentive to do that. Whether they're like, man, I don't know if I want to spend this extra money for so-and-so. Maybe I'll just buy one for myself. Well, if they know if they buy another one, they'll get another one free. Or they buy 2 more, they'll get 1 free. Chances are they're going to want to take advantage of that. So that's what I did. Think about what you can do that makes sense for your margins, but give them an incentive to buy more. Whether it's a buy so-and-so, get one free, buy two, get one 50% off. Whatever you guys want to do something. And like I said, I did that, put the sale on my chalkboard so people knew what the sale was, and they had the incentive. And when they were walking into my tent, they already knew if they found 3 items they liked, they were getting one free. A lot of times they went out of their way to find a third item so that they could get one free because they wanted 2 items. They're like, if I just find a third one, I'm going to get one free. So keep that in mind. Make sure you guys are running a sale, giving people the incentive to buy more. The next one is, like I talked about earlier, make sure you're taking credit card payments. Have a credit card processor, right? Etsy, you can get one from Etsy, where you can take payments. You can get one through PayPal, you can get one through Stripe. I mean, they pretty much all have them. But not only that, make sure that you have more than one payment processor, because whether maybe one goes down, one has intermittent issues. I had this happen. I made sure that I brought 2 because I was just like, I don't know what's going to happen. And one went down and I had to use the other one. So just make sure that you have more than one payment processor so that if one goes down, you can take payments, because that's the worst thing that can possibly happen. A lot of people nowadays don't have cash. So you want to make sure you can take their payments. So make sure you have a backup payment processor. And not only that, make sure you use it before you go. All right, so because you don't want to be fumbling around and not know how to use them. They're pretty simple, pretty easy to use. And even on the Etsy app, you can actually manually input stuff. You can manually input their card and take the payments that way on a worst case scenario. But I would recommend getting the swipers. It's just easier. And you can actually have the PayPal one that I use actually takes the chips. You push it into the bottom and you get the actual chips. So that's one way to do it as well. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you guys prepare for that. Don't only accept cash. That's a huge mistake. Make sure you can accept credit cards. All right. The next one is make sure you have business cards, and make sure that they're laid out and you hand them to people that don't buy. You give them to people in the bag that do buy. I would suggest maybe putting a coupon code on the business card, where if they come back, they can get 10 or 20% off a future purchase. And the last thing is just make sure your information on the business card is correct. I had this happen. I went to a vendor fair and I really liked this what this lady was selling. She was selling it was like art or little figurines. I can't remember. But what I do remember is I got her business card because I was like, I really think I may want to buy one of those. I got home and I typed in her shop link and it was wrong. She had the actual wrong shop name on her business card. So just make sure that you guys are double checking that, because it's typos happen, and a lot of times you don't even think about it. Your mind just replaces letters with different letters or omits letters. So just make sure have someone check it for you. Just run it by. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. So it's no big deal, but just make sure, especially something like that your stuff is correct. But I would definitely make sure to get business cards. Help promote your shop well beyond the vendor or craft fair. The next thing, and this should be the most obvious thing, make sure you guys are friendly. Make sure that you greet everyone that walks into your shop or into your tent, but don't be overbearing. Just give them a quick greeting. Hi, how you doing? If you have any questions, let me know, and just let them go. Be standoffish. People don't like when you're standing over them or you're following around the tent like a weirdo. Just be standoffish. Don't stare them down and stuff like that. People want to feel comfortable. They don't like people watching them look at items and stand there eager, like, are they going to buy? Are they going to buy? Please buy. It just seems desperate. So greet them and then just move on. Don't be overbearing, but just make sure that you're saying something. Don't ignore them, because that's the other end of the spectrum of weirdness. So make them feel comfortable and just give everyone a greeting, and I would recommend when they're leaving to just, hey, have a nice day. Thanks for stopping in, or whatever you want to do. But something like that. You will have people come back and buy later on. I've had that happen. So just create a good experience. A lot of people want to check out, do a run through all the tents, see if there's anything else they want to buy. Maybe there's not. and they'll circle back and buy from you. So I've had many people do that. So just keep that in mind, but make a good impression. So that's pretty much it. Those are the main things, the main takeaways that I learned from my experience doing craft and vendor fairs. Hopefully it's something that you guys can take away so that you're successful when you do your own. I would definitely recommend trying it. Some people make a lot of money doing it, but just make sure you're doing it the right way, that you're prepared, that it's thought out, and you have profit first mentality. You don't want to do it to lose money. You want to do it where it makes a lot of sense, so that you can extend your profits and not lose money by doing it. All right, before I let you guys go, I want to tell you about my Etsy Entrepreneur Masterclass and Help Forum community. In case you don't know, it's a masterclass that's centered around building your Etsy business, growing your Etsy business, getting the most sales, the most profits, the most revenues. Every module in there is dedicated to helping you guys grow your Etsy business. So I got modules on, testing, got modules on, stats, what do stats tell you about building your business? Of course, SEO, advanced SEO strategies. I'm always adding, thinking of new ways, new modules to add, thinking of new stuff to put in there for you guys. Part of that is also the Etsy Entrepreneur community, where you can work with me one-on-one, answer any question about your Etsy business, get almost an immediate response or a quick response from me. I'm in there every day helping members grow their Etsy businesses and shops. So not only can you watch the modules and learn that way, implement strategies that way, I'm there to help and support you on the flip side as well. So you have a live person that's doing it, that's been there, that's growing his own business, has grown his own business to the top 1%. I want to help you do the same. So that's why I did the community as well. And it's a game changer for people. So right now I'm actually offering that. I just started that today, 40% off for a year. If you do the year membership, you'll get 40% off. So normally it's $19 a month. So if you do the year, instead of the total amount, you can do it for $137. So $137. You can get the membership for an entire year at 40% off the normal price. So normally people would pay $228, which is still a deal. It's still very inexpensive for the amount of stuff that's in there. But if you sign up for the year, you can get it for $137. And new to the masterclass, I just added marketing promotional calendars, right? So every month I'm going to put a new promotional calendar in there. So it's an actual calendar. You can print it out. It's a PDF. You can use it to help schedule your sales and stuff like that. But I'm also putting holidays and marketing tips in there. So I just put March in there so you guys can get some marketing tips to help you with St. Patrick's Day and stuff like that. Every month I'm going to add a new one in there with marketing tips and strategies. If you're like me, it's nice to plan out stuff ahead of time. But now you can actually get almost a to-do list of, hey, do this strategy. You don't have to think about it. You can just do a strategy that I give you if you'd like, or use it for future ideas, for future strategies, future promotions. So I just added that to the masterclass. Like I said, I'm always thinking of new modules and videos to add in there to help build value, but most importantly, get you guys more sales, more traffic, and more revenue. So there's a link in the show notes so you can get it for 40% off, which is so cheap for the amount of stuff in there. One-on-one coaching alone is usually a couple $100. Classes from other people out there are usually a couple $100. Like I said, this has everything that I've done and am doing to grow my Etsy shop. So I would definitely take advantage of it. I would love to help you in the community. I would love to see you in there. Outside of that, if you guys got a lot out of this podcast, please make sure you leave a review. It helps me reach additional members and just helps me reach more people. And I want to see, whether good, bad, ugly, hopefully good. I want to see your reviews. I look at every one. I want to make sure that I'm impacting you in the most positive way and giving you the best content out there. So please take the time to leave a quick review. I'd really appreciate it. But until next time, I wish you guys nothing but continued success, and I will chat with you later.